want answers.
I want the truth.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Real Eyes, Real Lies podcast. I am your host, Georgina Grace, and today I am honored here with the most extraordinary human being, Rachel Vaughan. I thank you for being here, Rachel.
Thank you for having me, beautiful girl. It's an absolute pleasure.
Oh,
So exciting.
so exciting. I would really like to do something very special with my introduction for you. And I would love to introduce you through your ruling number.
Beautiful. Love to hear it.
I'm just totally going off the bat here. So we'll see how this goes. So you are a ruling or life path 36-9, which is a very significant number. 3,
Yeah.
6, and 9. It's an extraordinary number because the threes are not only are they extraordinarily intuitive people, they are very creative, they are full of life, they love to have fun, they have an exquisite sense of humors, and they have this curiosity about them that is just, it's like everything is exciting, everything is new, that kind of childlike, wonder. This is the 3 energy, and I think that really, really paints a beautiful picture of you because you are so that way.
It's you all over too, isn't it? Because that's your number. So it describes you perfectly.
Talking about you, Rachel. Me.
Right, I'll shut up. I'll stop talking. Expressing.
And then we have this beautiful 6 energy. This 6 is like, honestly, if you could vision up what Mother Earth, Mother Nature would be like embodied, this is that energy. And when you are in the presence of this woman, Rachel, that is what you feel. Mother Earth is like, if you think about it, she holds us all. And to Mother Earth, we are all her children. And that is this woman. Everyone becomes her family. She loves everyone like she's loved them for millennia. Nurturing, beautiful, divine goddess here to bring peace to the world and to all. And then you have this 9 energy. And the 9 energy, this is you're a healer. You're a healer, an energetic healer, a healer of lifetimes, a healer of souls, a healer of just everything. Healers tend to bring quite intense experiences to themselves fairly early on in life. They're here on a mission, these 9 energies. They are here. Nines are all about completing and ending cycles. And they come here on a mission. And so 9s often experience that they feel like they have lived hundreds of lifetimes in a single lifetime because of how many missions and how many cycles they have brought an ending to. And I think this is just such a beautiful and extraordinarily powerful thing about you, because this is your entire life. You are here on a specific mission to end some pretty big cycles in this world. And I really feel strongly that you perhaps have attempted to do this over a few lifetimes, and there were mistakes made in the past, maybe, or trial and error. And now you've come into this lifetime as a ruling 36-9, which is the highest 9 you can be. So it tells me that this is it. This is the one.
I'm not coming back.
You're not coming back.
I'm not coming back.
No.
No.
Thank you. Yes, so this is Rachel. She's also the 369 combination is someone who's also highly has incredible abilities, psychic ability, extra human, superhuman abilities, in all forms. And I think we will get to talk about more about that throughout this episode, maybe at some point. But yeah, so this is who we have with us today. Thank you for being here, you extraordinary and inspiring woman.
Thank you, beautiful soul. Oh my God. People are going to be lining up to go on your podcast. Please let me be on your podcast, Georgie. Thank you. That was just absolutely beautiful. You're sweet.
Oh, thank you so much. And I wanted to also, before we got into everything that we're getting into, I really wanted to just take a moment to publicly acknowledge you because you have made such a profound impact on my life, my husband's life, my family's life, like really in such a short amount of time. I can't even tell you what my life was like before, the beginning of this year. And I had a reading with Rachel early January, right after I actually, unfortunately, had a miscarriage that was absolutely devastating. I had one session with Rachel, and I cannot tell you the healing that actually occurred from this single hour long, I think it might have been a little bit longer, is my ruling three.
It was a beautiful chat. And the thing is, darling, you healed yourself. So, the thing is when you go and have a reading with somebody and hopefully they're ethical,
Mm,
you will get a healing at the same time, but you have to allow yourself to be healed. That's the other thing. And a lot of people in that situation will actually, I don't know, with miscarriages, some people can even blame themselves, which is just crazy.
mm,
So, you've got to give yourself an enormous amount of credit for that too. And you have made amazing effect in my life. You've been teaching me how to use numbers in a way I didn't even realize how important they were. No
mm.
idea. Um, so I've got to thank you for that too. It goes both ways.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love that you shine the light back on me. And that's just such an example of the quality human that you are. It's just so beautiful, really. And so just thank you from the bottom, top, side, every place you can in my heart.
Oh, gorgeous woman. It's an honor. It's an honor to know you, Georgina. And that's why, I wanted to showcase you and share you with the world because I knew you're going to do something really special and you've already done it, darling. You've embarked on so much in such a short period of time. And I think that's the epitome of what is going on at the moment. People don't need to hold back anymore.
Mm-mm.
Coming into whole new paradigm. And in this new paradigm, you've got to be completely yourself, completely true to what you came here to do. Find your soul purpose. And you've
Mm.
just,
Mm. Thank you so, so, so much. And thank you for being my very first guest on this podcast. What an honor.
I was Max Lowen's first guest too. It was so cool.
Oh,
Yeah, I love
wow.
it. Yeah, and Annika Lucas's. So I'm a starter and a finisher, as you pointed out.
Yes, you are. Oh, that's amazing. So, on that note, I wanted to then invite you to perhaps share a bit of your story. And your story is, you know, probably not the most glamorous story.
No, certainly wouldn't describe it as glamorous. Heaven no.
No, and may actually be a little hard to hear for some people, but I really, and may even be hard for me to hear, you know, this stuff is never easy to hear. If you're a pure-hearted soul, you're never going to be skipping through these kinds of conversations, you know? And so, but I really, really, really believe that it is so critically important that this gets out there the truth of what's actually going on, and people deal with it. They face this stuff, and because I think once they do that, then they're better equipped to protect themselves, protect their own families, and really stand for what really matters in life, which is each other.
Absolutely. All right. Well, where do you start? So I always start with where I grew up. I grew up in Adelaide in South Australia. I always start there because Adelaide has a very dark, murky history. Um, so I come from a Freemason family line. My great grandfather was a very high up Freemason, Grand President of the Grand Lodge. His name was Joseph Wright.
Mm.
His daughter, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, is reportedly was the head of the Eastern Star sect, which is the female version of Freemasonry. She was the Justice of the Peace. I said this exact same thing in an interview I did last night. Justice of the Peace, and she was an Order of Australia Medal recipient. And she also she worked in government at a time when women didn't have jobs.
Yeah.
She left her husband with 5 children at a time when women didn't leave their husbands. So she was a very powerful woman. She's in the who's who of powerful women in multiple magazines of that title. So she had a lot of power.
And
And my
so,
father was the product of her relationship with, obviously, my grandfather. My grandfather survived 2 world wars. Mm, yeah,
wow.
he was a telecommunications officer. My father became a telecommunications officer. I do suspect that perhaps my paternal grandfather might have been working as a Secret Service type individual,
Wow.
but my father most definitely was. He was an ASIO operative, which for your global listeners is someone who's equivalent to CIA or Mossad or MI6,
Mm.
Australia's version. So this is the interesting thing that people need to know. So the world is run by blackmail operations using honeypots, little children, to blackmail very, very powerful people. And that is how it works, unfortunately. So those Secret Service agencies that I just described, that is their job,
Mm.
to spy on people, to covertly, to put them in compromising situations and to covertly film, tape, photograph, and then use that as blackmail material. And I was utilized as a honeypot as a child.
Mm.
I was taken through tunnels. My father was a telecommunications officer and actually described himself openly as a line tapper, a wire tapper, which is what a spy does.
Mhm.
He worked for the only telecommunications company in Australia for that time, Telecom, and he had a telecommunications bunker underneath the main shed of the property that I grew up on. He built the house on that property. He built it so that it would have a secret cellar. The
Mm.
cellar had 3 cells between the cellar and the bunker, and the bunker led to tunnels. Now, in the 3 cells that were ship's ballast tanks, he would keep children holed up because you couldn't hear them. These are, thick steel ballast tanks from ships. And it's interesting. My brother Andrew has, we've discussed, when they were put in, and he remembers a time when that would have happened. He remembers that my father had his own brickmaker. So he had the bricks, he could make his own bricks for this hidden cellar. There would be no, record of where the bricks had come from. Built the house himself. He built the shed over the bunker. I've managed to prove the existence of the bunker. There's another telecommunications bunker on South Road underneath the old, or the Australian Motors Mazda site. So it's only, and basically you don't have singular bunkers. They have tunnels between them, and they are peppered all around the place so that people can run in between each bunker. So I've proven the existence of the tunnels and the bunkers in that area. And there's quite an extensive tunnel network. So that was something that happened to me during my childhood in the 70s and 80s. And besides that, I was also utilised in medical experimentation. I was psychically trained under the MK Ultra Theta training project, psychic project, and I witnessed a lot of horrific things, including satanic ritual abuse.
Mm.
So, it was messy. I was using child rape material, even in Channel 9 studios at one stage. So not a nice story, but this is the underpinning of all of the very, very powerful people in this world. And it's really interesting because a lot of them wanting to get power will go into those situations. They'll go to visit places like Epstein Island, knowing what's going to happen because it will get them places.
Mm.
Quite bizarre, but it's actually how it works. And we've had, quite a few arrests in those arenas. We've had the Ranier arrests. We've had obviously P. Diddy recently, Epstein, Maxwell. It's interesting. It's all being torn down. We would not be hearing about that if it was still going on in
Totally.
those particular echelons. I believe it's still happening all across the world, but clearly something's going on. Someone's cleaning up a mess.
Mm, absolutely. And I think it's really important to highlight the fact that, you know, most people would be aware of, you know, child trafficking and all of the stuff that goes on in the States and all of this kind of stuff. Most people would have some level of awareness that that is something that happens. But I think particularly in Australia, people are a bit like head in the sand that it happens here. And it really happens here and it happens here. It's rife.
It is.
And, when you were sharing about your grandmother and all of her accolades, someone could listen to that and go, wow, she was an extraordinary woman. But actually, what was actually going on that she
Yeah,
was that powerful?
exactly.
And
Exactly.
we have Freemason halls everywhere. But I don't know that people are aware that there are higher levels, that there is a level system. Do you know?
Mm.
So could you explain a little bit about like the what a high level Freemason actually is, what
Yeah.
these things actually are and mean for people?
There's varying degrees of Freemasonry. So your lower level, third degree Mason, is going through little pantomime rituals. So they go and hang out with a group of men. They wear the little apron. They feel like they're all doing the handshakes and they're wearing their jewelry and they feel like they belong somewhere. And when they go down the local shop and the other Masons there, they know that they'll get things cheaper, they'll get taken care of. And this is why they do it.
Mm,
And from what I understand, the beginnings of Masonry was actually a fraternity of people who were being enslaved by the lords and the ladies of that time, and they decided, well, let's make our little let's do our own little secret thing to
mm,
protect ourselves from those individuals. And of course, it got co-opted and it got turned into something totally evil and inverted, and we have what we have now. When you get to the level of a 33rd degree Mason, this is where they have to actually rape and murder a child or multiple children, and they have blackmail material on each other. And so this is the level that people like Walt Disney and many many others achieved. And people don't seem to realize that Walt Disney was actually a CIA operative, and it's very obvious and well known that he was. It wasn't hidden. He runs a place called, well, he ran a place called Disneyland, and that's still operating with tunnels and
mm,
a lot of very dodgy things going on there, and a lot of Masonic imagery, at Disneyland. It's the last place I would go with children. Children go missing there all the time. So that the higher up they go, the more corrupt they become. They actually take on demonic entities. So this might be a little bit outside of most people's comfort zone.
mm.
But through millennia, people have described these things. There's plenty of books about it. It's in the Bible. It's in every religion. But it's just in the Western model since the advent of psychology. It's like, oh no, none of that's actually real, supposedly.
I mean,
So
they spent 500 years burning women because they thought they were these evil demonic witches. So like everybody knows about that. It's not that
exactly, yeah.
far-fetched that these people would be using these things to their advantage.
Yeah.
So it's just insane. And so the 33 level, that's the highest level of the Freemason.
I assume so. I mean, to
Meaning,
be honest, I haven't looked that deeply into Freemasonry because I was born into it. If
Yeah.
there's memories that need to come up, I don't want to be searching for the information. I want it to come up naturally. So I haven't researched it, but I've certainly had, I run a Telegram channel and I have a lot of stuff that's shared in there. So I do see, the odd thing or two. But it's you cannot have secret societies and not have truly evil things going on. And one of the greatest, well, the greatest lie that's ever told us that the devil doesn't exist. And there's not just one devil. There's not just one Satan. There are countless demons. There are even more powerful demons than the ones that just, run around on the face of the earth. There are the ones that people call up in satanic rituals for
Mm.
power. It's really disturbing. And, we've got a lot of people who don't want to know, who want to say, keep away from psychic ability because that protects you from these sorts of things. And actual fact, all it does is make you a sitting duck for it, because I guarantee there's other people who are using those, black magic, sex magic, blood magic, doing all of those disgusting things.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who just sit there and have no idea. No idea. They're so scared to even look at it, and they are not protected. Yeah,
And
scary.
so you obviously came into this life very gifted.
Mm.
However, you were also born into a long family line of, do we call them Satanists?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you're born into that and you have special gifts, what what does that do for them? Obviously, they get
So
really excited about it.
they certainly do, absolutely. So, there's various things in my family that made us earmarked for this sort of abuse that I went through.
Mm.
One of those is the Rh negative bloodline. So, as I was saying in an interview last night, my grandmother, the very well-to-do grandmother, she did our genealogy for the McIntyre family, my maiden name being McIntyre, and she went all the way back to a Catherine Kennedy, and then she stopped looking. So that's where the genealogy ends. Now, Catherine Kennedy, the Kennedy name, is part of the 13 Illuminati bloodline families. Now, my grandmother who did that genealogy was from a grand president of the Grand Lodge, a very, very high up Mason called Joseph Wright. She had position because of her father.
Mm.
My father, having come from that lineage, I believe he was groomed into he's a psychopath. He's a mass murderer. He's very well known for being a person of interest in the murder and disappearance of the three Beaumont children. He famously went on camera in 2015 and said that his good friend Anthony Munro brought the children to his property in the boot of a car and they were deceased. My sister Ruth has stated in multiple interviews that she saw the children deceased in the boot of the car. Another of our siblings, Claire, also saw the children. She's now dead. She supposedly committed suicide by breaking her own neck with a sash cord in 2009. And, it just goes on. My father had impunity from prosecution. So I went through 18 years of making official allegations to authorities in South Australia. We're talking every agency above police that you can imagine, police ministers, commissions, royal commissions, everything that you can possibly imagine, every avenue I could possibly go through, until he eventually died in 2017. And I decided, well, I'm not going to make so many official allegations now because I can't have him put away, but I'm going to prove that he was involved in those cases because the police refused to do it. So in the last 5 years, I've gone public with my allegations, and I've put out multiple blogs and multiple vlogs where I've shown all of the evidence, photographic evidence, so much evidence to prove that he was involved with these things.
Mm-hmm.
To the point now, and I've got two siblings who worked very hard in that process too. One of my siblings, my brother Andrew McIntyre, had Anthony Munro, who was also the co-accused of our father for the Beaumont disappearance. He had him incarcerated in 2016 for 10 years, which is pretty impressive. There was another gentleman involved in that who was also abused as a child by Munro, but he doesn't like to be named, but he's also a major hero. My father has two other friends that are also convicted pedophiles, and yet the police will not just basically say that my father was involved. They won't but blame him for it. They will not exhume the remains at two of his properties, at Macklin Street in Edwardstown and at Stansbury on the York Peninsula. And my brother Andrew McIntyre was recently told by a major crime detective that the reason they will not exhume those remains is because of the suppression order on the Mulligan inquiry. Now, the Mulligan inquiry was an inquiry into the abuses and deaths of state wards.
Mm.
My father was involved with countless deaths of state wards. The Beaumont children were not state wards. So this proves that he was involved with the state ward deaths that myself and my siblings have been alleging for over a decade, all three of us making multiple allegations and multiple reports, providing photographic evidence, and they just don't want to look into it. So we have to get the Mulligan inquiry suppression order overturned to get justice. And I think that's coming very soon.
So this is a really interesting thing that you're bringing up because, have also had a father who was a total psychopath and dishonorably discharged from, the military or the army, served in the Korean War. And, there was some dodgy things that he did overseas with some Korean women. Apparently, that's what I know. So it was on his record that he did this stuff. The most he ever got was 2 years that I'm aware of. And so it begs the question, why? Why do the police not do anything? Why do these people, like it is, if you look in any kind of news article or anywhere, people that like rapists or pedophiles, they really don't get the sentence that they truly deserve. And you have done over the last 18 years, you have done their work for them, like delivered it up on a silver platter. Here's how you can stop this from continuing to our children, but they don't want to touch it. They don't want to go near it. They don't even, you've got people who are actively trying to, shut you down and shut you up, right? And it's so why? I mean, why are they not wanting to do anything about it? Why do they turn their head? Why is there all these suppression orders? What is going on? Because the police are there for us, aren't they?
It goes back to exactly what you're saying before about Australia being a hotbed for this stuff. It is because that is how the world is run, through those blackmail operations. My father was a procurer of child rape material, but he was also a procurer of blackmail material. So they don't want, if they were to properly investigate, and I put my blogs out publicly and people can see them, they're on my channels, but they cannot investigate it because there is a knock-on effect to all of these people that were involved with that and who were blackmailed and who had positions of power, and their families would be affected, media would be affected, the judiciary would be affected. It would be, but it's going to happen. This ripple effect, it's already started.
Yeah.
And it's going to come down on them.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because we've just come in astrologically, we've come into 4 years of truth. And it's just going to keep happening over and over and over again. And we've got this amazing, I know we've got to be careful what we say on YouTube, but obviously there's something quite incredible that's happened in the German parliament recently where they've actually acknowledged that the pandemic, there was no pandemic. It was to sell vaccines. So and they heavily abused their people in that country with that vaccine. So, all those vaccines, so that knockdown effect, it's coming big time.
Yeah.
So it's now time for those who are watching this and who are on the wrong side, you better start speaking up.
Yeah. Even just like opening your eyes, opening your ears, allowing this information to actually get in, because this is the reality. As fantastical and as ridiculous and, oh no, the police are really good, and unfortunately, in a perfect world, yeah, it would be great if we had police, we had people there that were actually there to serve us. But that's not the case. These people, some of them are innocent, not every single police officer, not every single person in the, but there are a lot, like you said, that are either tied up in these cult networks or they're blackmailed. And, you use the word honeypot, and this is something that you were used for, weren't you? And that's just horrific. would you be okay to explain what that is for people that
Yeah.
don't
So
know?
as an example, you just mentioned police and the corruption with police. So one of my father's very good friends, Graham Bennett Fraser, who was a chief inspector of police at the time that I knew him as a child, was involved in the procurement of child rape material with two missing children. And my father told me at the time that this was somebody that should have been actually involved in looking for at least one of those children. It was apparently in his jurisdiction. Of course, I can't get any further information about that, except to say that he lived very close by to one of those missing children. Um, so people who get into the really high levels of police in Australia, South Australia, they have to be high-level Masons. They won't get there otherwise. I've been told that's the same with the military. So you will not find the right people in those higher levels, and you will have good people in the lower levels who go into it for the right reason, but you won't have them in the higher levels. So if you've got good people, one of the things that I came up against over and over and over again, and my siblings as well, in trying to get these, it's not just my father, there's multiple people in this cult that needed to be looked into. And as I said, 3 of them are convicted pedophiles now. Gosh, where was I going with that? I've lost, lost my train of thought. It's gone.
You're
Happens
explaining
sometimes.
what a honeypot is.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So when you've got really powerful people, they use the blackmail material. So with me, I can't even remember I don't remember a time when it wasn't happening to me.
Mm.
So I was being abused by his friends. I was being taken to a club, which ended up years later was called the Pink Pussy, which,
Charming.
yeah. So obviously they're talking about something that's not gone through puberty. Um, and I was forced to sort of dance on tables as a toddler, as a tiny toddler. And so, and I was abused there. I was taken through tunnels. So with the honeypot work, specifically with the blackmail material, I'd be taken through the tunnel in the middle of the night. I'd be woken up, taken through the tunnels, taken to bunkers, taken to cellars, taken to other people's houses. It would be dark. I'd be sort of placed on a person. That person, when the flash bulbs would go off, would either be asleep and get jabbed and wake up at that time, so they're probably drugged. Some of them were active participants, and it was they were quite open about it. They showed their faces. That must have just been purely for the child rape material. My father had a lined room underneath the house in the hidden cellar where most of that child rape material was procured. But it also happened at Channel 9 Studios. I was filmed there when I was being raped by more than one person on one occasion. And it's really interesting because my brother, after 10 years of campaigning to try and get an interview at the Major Crime Department headquarters in Adelaide over the Beaumont children situation, they finally agreed to interview him the day before Anthony Munro was to be sentenced for abusing Andrew as a child. And they had no interest at all in his huge amount of evidence that he brought in. No interest in that. They refused to take it. I've got the recording. Andrew managed to get the recording of the interview. All they were interested in was the canisters, the old milk canisters that my father had that blackmail material hidden in. And they wanted to know if Andrew knew where they were. So there's multiple of those. And we'll find them. Got a fair idea where they might be. So, but you can see why they'd be concerned about that, because my father, even though he was the scum of the earth, there was a part of him that didn't like doing what he was told. He liked to abuse children, he liked to murder, but he didn't like to be controlled. And he was told to do, some of the messy jobs. Like I've always referred to him as the body boy for the family. So the family murders in Adelaide, Adelaide's famous for those family murders. These poor young boys and young men who were basically taken off the street, tortured, murdered, and left out to be found. And that was my father's signature. He left them out to be found because he was partly it was a tormentation campaign of the Adelaide people and all the children to make them terrified, just like putting missing children on milk cartons. I mean, really think about that. Your children wake up in the morning to go and have breakfast. What do you do when you eat your breakfast at the kitchen table when you didn't have devices? This is talking 70s and 80s, you weren't allowed to have the television on. You'd look at the carton, the milk carton or the cereal packet, and you'd see a missing child. Like, what does that do to a child's mind and the parents? So, And it's actually an advertising campaign. So those missing children that get put onto those cartons, that's the form of advertising, because often they'll be kept for quite some time, as they were, under my father's property. They were kept for months, one of them.
Mm.
Yeah. So, oh gosh. So, the honeypot stuff, it ranges over, so many different areas. It's not just blackmail material. It's also, child pornography fetches a lot of money. I cannot imagine the amount of money my father must have made off me over the years, and my siblings. Yeah.
Wow. It's so no words to really describe that experience. You know, what a warrior you are to have gone through that, And you and I know that you came here for this purpose,
Yeah.
So there was a part of you that had to go through that experience. That's that nine energy, right? Like you, those experiences, you came here, but this is the cycle that you are here to end, right? And um, I really, not that I would like to talk about this, but I think it's important to talk. You mentioned tunnels. And this is something that I feel like a lot of people are like, there's not, there's no tunnels underground, they're stormwater drains. That's for water. That's for the, telecommunicate. That's what it's for. That's what they're used for. But that is not the case. I mean, it is a bit, but it's not the whole story. And it's, so could you talk a little bit about these tunnels and
Sure.
what they are used for?
So if you look down the street, you will see all these electricity wires on long poles, and you think, why aren't they underground? Oh, it's just too difficult to put them underground. But every main street and every main road in Australia has Telstra tunnels. So why wouldn't they put them in the Telstra tunnels? Because there's tunnels. So you walk along any street and you will see these metal plates on the ground.
Mm.
And those pits, they're called pits, quite large. There's usually, if you've got more than one of those metal plates on top, you've usually got a ladder. It's 5 to 6 feet deep. It's usually 1 to 2 meters across. And some of those tunnels aren't closed at either end, the pits. They just go on for miles. So every main street, every main road, you've got tunnels. They're walkable. So, I still question, why the hell don't they have the electricity? Why isn't that under there as well? It's so strange. Um, a lot of the water tunnels aren't walkable. They're small, but a lot of them are very large. And in the area where I grew up, many of them are walkable. Huge
Mm.
thing. Also, in the area that I grew up in, there were tunnels underneath the Avoca Hotel. There was that bunker that I mentioned at the Australian Motors Massive that they call the dungeon. I rang up one day to find out, and they actually call it the dungeon. There were tunnels. There's all the Telstra tunnels in the area. There are a lot of places, water notes on the SA water maps. There are these gutter holes, in the street that aren't actually on any of the government maps. And I managed to map all of those that are all in the places where I said there were tunnels. So, lo and behold, there's the tunnels. So I did prove the existence of the tunnels, and I put that information out. And the numbers are going up on those videos too, which, and on, sharing the PDF that's been shared widely. So, it amuses me that people still don't understand this. There is, if the Telstra tunnels alone, that's enough. There are people in other countries that talk about being trafficked through the telecommunications tunnels as well. And it's not just me.
And there was a mandate, wasn't there, to actually put tunnels in as
Yeah,
well. So
yeah, yeah.
that's
Oh,
like,
it's got an amazing history. So in 1938, there was a mandate because Adelaide, or South Road specifically, they were very concerned about the Japanese mooring the Tokyo Rose, a warship, off the very deep waters off Kangaroo Island, and then flying their airships up South Road. That was apparently what was going to happen. Well, if you want to put tunnels in, you make up a story like that. You rally all the troops, make every single person in the state dig holes. So we had to have a tunnel or a bunker within 20 feet of the back door of every house, every business, and every meeting place. That's a shitload of tunnels. And so where I grew up in Edwardstown in South Australia, there was a Wunderlich's terracotta tile factory. There was a lot of clay in that area, and they kept changing the suburb names, which is really interesting. So Originally, it was called Vermont. As they dug out the clay, they built their brick kilns and their terracotta tile kilns at that lower level. When all the clay was exhausted, they changed the name to Hammersmith. They brought fill in. My father bought the property at various times. So then you had the 1938 mandate. So all of these old brick kilns were just ripe for the picking. They'd been used as cold stores for many years. But in the 1938 mandate, a lot of them were used as telecommunications bunkers, again, because they were expecting to have to protect the very large workforce in that area. And they were expecting to have these airships or these bombers fly up South Road. Also, there's a train line just right by where I grew up. So, if you're going to have any kind of trafficking, any kind of contraband, you need tunnels near the train line to get them to the train line. And there's actually a void in the platform of the Edwardstown railway station that's still unexplained. That you could see that you could peel back the metal underneath the platform. And I'm not suggesting people go and play around there because it's a freaking train that goes past it and you don't want to get squashed. But I came out of a tunnel in that location as a child, just across from Maxwell Avenue, exactly where the void is. And my father pointed at the street name and said, that was his tunnel because his name was Alan Maxwell McIntyre. Yeah. Yeah. So for people who don't believe in the tunnels, well, look up my PDF and look up my video because I'll prove otherwise.
Yeah, and there was a fringe festival in one of the tunnels just recently as well, wasn't there? So, I mean,
yes, a tunnel that I pointed out there was a ritual in when I was a child.
there was a ritual in that tunnel.
In that tunnel.
Wow.
And in the interview before the Fringe Festival, or to advertise that particular tunnel, I don't know what exhibition, the guy's talking about all these nefarious things that he's heard has happened in that tunnel.
Yeah. All these wacko stories
Yeah.
that are not wacko at all.
No.
And so these tunnels are being used in Australia to traffic children.
Yes.
For all of the reasons that we've talked about, for rape material, for, blackmail material, simply because these people are psychos and they actually, that's their kink as well, right? 'Cause pedophilia.
And it's easy because the police aren't going to investigate them. In 2018, when I actually went public for the first time, I'd been on social media complaining, and I'd obviously been making a lot of allegations through the official channels. And I just got so frustrated when my father died. And I learned there was still a child being abused in that area. Actually, there were multiple children, but one in particular I knew was being trafficked through those tunnels. I was just furious. I was furious. And so I now am quite confident that they are not using the tunnels, mainly because one of the main culprits who was still abusing and had abused this child I just mentioned, he went bankrupt recently and had to give up the house he'd owned for 36 years.
Interesting.
Motivation.
Very interesting.
Used to train police dogs for things that you don't even want to hear about.
Oh, goodness. And so how many children do you think would you estimate are being trafficked in Australia on a yearly basis?
I wouldn't even know the number, sweetheart, because the state-sanctioned trafficking is the most common. So this is what people don't seem to understand. So this mandatory reporting stuff that we've got. So if you mandatorily report that you think a child's being sexually abused, which is a kind of harder thing to do, in many, many cases, that child's then flagged as someone who's already been abused. If they've actually spoken out and said something to somebody and then that mandatory report's been made, they will be made to regret that they ever spoke about it. They usually get taken into the system and then they get trafficked. So they might have been abused by one person or a couple of people in the family, then they get abused by hundreds. It's a $6 billion industry in Australia annually. It is absolutely horrific. And the number of children who get taken from, what might not be a great situation and put in the system who end up killing themselves. You are 6 times more likely to get sexually abused in the foster system. children in the foster system die, whether it's by their own hand or somebody else. And the amount of money that these people make from it is horrendous. They will, if the children speak up, they get horrifically, not just abused, sexually abused, but they'll get put on so much medication to shut them up. So it's, God forbid that they become a street kid, because then they're just ripe for the picking. Then they just, disappear, and it gets even worse for them. Yeah. So I think people really need to think about that when they start, I don't even know what the answer is to that is. I've said before, natural law is the only thing I can think of is the answer to it.
Just
But
too,
that again will crumble.
yeah, absolutely. It will definitely crumble, and it just can't possibly continue. With the way that the world is going, it cannot possibly continue, which is the good news, I think. These poor children, like it's just horrific, and they get taken from families in what seems like an ethical thing, like you said, the system, the protective services, but they're
But it's
just,
often not protective, is it, Georgina? You know from your work, it's often not protective.
it's
It's because
not
a
a,
mother hasn't had a COVID vaccine.
yeah,
It's disgusting.
it's totally disgusting. And, you know, it's really interesting because I know that, South Australia is like probably one of the worst states for the trafficking and all of this. And it's equally when it comes to childbirth, and like they have these crazy things called birth restrictions in South Australia. So it's like it's like you can only give birth in the ways that we say. And if you do it outside of what we say, then, you know, you're risking a baby's life, therefore you're not fit. So we have to
Yeah.
take your baby away from you. And it's just really interesting that those two stats are exist in the same state. And it's
Yeah.
just that's what, really gets to me, I think, is the fact that these people get off on really young, like infant. And this is something that was happening to you from infancy as well. But that's like my brain won't let me go to that place of like what that would actually mean and look like and experience, um, just absolutely horrific.
It is. It is. Yeah. I mean, and this is where you get back to the Freemasonry thing again. They believe that, and there's other religions that believe this, they believe that they have to sexually penetrate a child from the back end before the age of 3 to open them up psychically. I mean, this is how demented these people are. What they're actually doing is causing what's called chronic reverse polarity, where the chakras can actually reverse. So you'll end up with your base chakra at the crown chakra at the base, and you will end up with somebody with a horrific number of health problems because it's totally unnatural. It can also open a soul up to, or a person up to, having some sort of demonic entity come in, because you've got someone who is so traumatized by the experience that they can then be dissociative, and that can allow things in. And that's also part of the Freemason thing. They actually do that on purpose to try and push something into the child. There's also a lot of really sick stuff around them, thinking that, the perpetrator gets some sort of long life from it, which is disgusting.
Mm.
Yeah. So, the child abuse in this country is very convoluted. It's not just about rape. It's not just about satisfaction sexually. It's not just about people having sick predilections. It's very, very spiritual,
Mm.
very complicated.
And there's also programming involved, right? Like this is kind of how they've kept their, what would you call it, their systems in place and for such a long time, right? Through this programming that they do with children from a very young age. And so a lot of our celebrities and people that a lot of people look up to, these people are programmed, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah, it's really sad. So you see a lot of the MK Ultra programming you will see in Hollywood. You'll see it in the music industry. Specifically, the music industry is really bad because demonic entities use the auditory channels. So you will get them co-opting and utilizing sound because of that frequency, and they'll use that to mind control masses of people. The really, really high up music industry executives and the minions that they use, their stars, heavily abused, and often very, very dissociative. There's footage of Beyonce sort of rocking at an event, looking so spaced out and weird, like
Yeah.
a child rocking. Obviously, Britney Spears has had a lot of issues, a lot
Yeah.
of issues.
Yeah.
Um,
I've recently seen a lot about Amanda Bynes. I don't know if you know her. She used to be on Nickelodeon as a kid, and there's just that poor, poor, poor woman. She was
yeah,
off.
I have seen, yeah, poor
Yeah.
darling. And it's interesting how many of them are speaking out.
Mm.
Um, you get phenomena like, around the age of 27, the MK Ultra programming starts to break down. And
Yeah.
so you'll often see them either suicide,
Yeah.
these autoerotic asphyxiation deaths when they chained up to or tied up to a doorknob. That's a Masonic death. Nobody does that. Nobody dies that way. It's a Masonic death. And it's usually because they've spoken out. So that's when you break an oath under the Masonic oath code, there are specific ways that you will be murdered and
Mm.
taken out for doing that. Um, so you'll often see if they don't suicide or whatever, you'll see them going back to rehab. There'll be big stories about them, they're drug using and they have to go to rehab, and their controllers or their family members or the handler or their producer or whatever is supposed to be helping them out, but they're actually just making sure that they won't be a cash cow. And it's so sad because we're supposed to revere these people. We've got all these very young children that think that these people are amazing and they want to live that life and they want to be just like them. And it's basically it's slavery, which is again, it's that very clever inversion. But I think already people are waking up to this now
Yeah.
massively.
I mean, you can't, it's not really far-fetched now with, the P. Diddy thing that just happened. And like, even other celebrities are coming out and speaking up about P. Diddy. And I don't know if that's part of it as well, that it was trying to make it seem like it was just a isolated kind of P. Diddy thing, or I can't help but question everything now
Yeah.
that comes out, and it
It's a
drives me
good thing.
insane. I get to the point where I just like I'll hear about stuff because someone will tell me, not because because there's just so much now. But yeah, so thank you. Thank you for sharing everything that you have shared and the journey that you have been on to get to where you are. Thank you for coming into this life with your sole purpose solely about this is ending,
Yeah.
and I really feel that this will end in this lifetime. It can't not. The
No,
frequency of the earth is raising very, very rapidly.
it
Um,
is.
yeah. And so a lot of people would be like, okay, but you're speaking out, Rachel. You're speaking out. So how are you still here? How are you still alive? And obviously, there's so many things, right? There's the healing, but also the risk of speaking out. And you're a major threat, aren't you? And how do you openly like for yourself, for a lot of people who are survivors of, any kind of abuse, but particularly this kind of like sexual abuse as well, a lot of them feel really, really terrible, not terrible, sorry, terrified at
Yeah.
speaking out. Like it's really scary to do that. And
Mm.
so how did you start to do this? What was the thing for you that gave you the access to be free enough to speak?
Well, I've got to commend you because obviously you're doing the same thing now, and it's a beautiful thing to behold. And I'm very, very proud to know you because you're doing that.
Yeah.
I have been doing this for a very long time. So I spoke out about certain people molesting me, even as a teenager. But because it was so rife in my family, it was like, well, no big deal, and nobody tried to rescue me. Or at times where I thought I was going to get rescued, I actually ended up having something terrible happen to me, and another family member abused me. But it's interesting, you know, when I first started making allegations, the first memories that came up were not vanilla, they were horrible. horrific, but they were the least horrible in a raft of terrible, terrible memories. And as I got stronger and I'm very defiant, and as I got abused by police for daring to speak up, not physically or sexually, but, just, laughed at or whatever, I
Mm.
got more defiant and more pissed off. And so I kept pushing and pushing. And then I'd write to the parliamentarians and I'd go to the authorities above the police, and I just kept going and going. And the more pushback I got, the more furious I got, and the more dogged and determined I became. And I don't know if maybe that was part of I don't think it's programming. I think that's just who I am. I just
Well,
don't
yeah, you came in with these specific numbers, Rachel. Like, there's no stopping you. You're on this mission. Like,
I was never going to stop. It was never going to put me off.
mm.
Um, I do, occasionally someone will come in and call me an agent because I'm still alive, which is fabulous. Because, you go through all of this, you go through all of that shit as a kid, and then you go through all of this horrible pressure cooker, not being able to sleep at night because you've said something and you think, oh my God, they're going to come after me now. And all of that over, it's 2006, so over an 18-year span.
Wow.
And then you get that. And it's like, well, you can't please everyone. So I'm not an agent, but I do have a very interesting family line. I think perhaps the Kennedy line factor gives me some sort of protection. I think perhaps the fact that I've put out so much evidence would be pretty obvious who would be coming after me.
Yeah.
I've named a lot of names.
Yeah.
Maybe not all of them publicly, but a lot of other people have documents from me that name them all. There's really, and I've definitely got angelic protection. So, it's a combination of things. And I think the truth does protect you to a degree. If you're working from integrity and you know that you are right, and it's interesting too, there comes a point where you just don't care anymore. If they take me out, I have achieved more than I even expected in this lifetime. If it's my time, it's my time. I really don't care.
I mean, you have had near death or death experiences, haven't you? So it's like,
Multiple.
yeah. And the
It's
other
harder to
side,
be here. I am not suicidal. I would never take my life because I know from being a medium that people who suicide end up in the fourth dimension. So that's not an option. So I'm just here I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
yeah, I've heard that it's so much nicer on the other side.
It is so much nicer. It is beautiful. But yeah, for those listening, suicide is not an option because trust me, you end up in limbo for an eternity. It is not worth it.
Horrible, horrible existence. Mm. And so I'd really like to ask you about something that people may think or may find controversial. And that is, as horrific and horrible and all of the words that we could use to describe your father, you have forgiven him.
Yeah.
How in the heck? Why in the heck? But doesn't that then condone what he does? Like,
No, and I love the way that you presented that when you did your podcast, because my heart sang when I heard you saying those words. So forgiveness has nothing to do with forgiving the person for what they've done. What you're actually doing is you're saying, okay, I believe thoroughly that I came into this lifetime and I chose my parents and I knew it wasn't going to be fun. I had a pretty good idea that it was not going to be a great childhood, but I knew I had a purpose and I had to probably go through some pretty full-on stuff to get to the other side to do what I'm doing now. So that's something I chose. I decided, I think it was about 2012, there was this pivotal moment and I was so sick up till then. And it suddenly occurred to me, oh my God, I came in here with this purpose and I did this for a reason and I'm not a victim. And it completely shifted everything. And I wasn't angry anymore and I wasn't bitter and I got better. I got so much better. I was healthy again. And then I recognized that as disgusting and horrific, and I do not condone what he did in any way, shape, or form, specifically and most importantly for those children who are not here to speak, and the way that he did the things that he did, I know that it was a role that he played. Now, trust me, his soul is in a very dark place and probably will never be released. But I recognize that there are things that probably happened to him, given his grandfather, given the Masonic connections. He could have been simply a mind-controlled slave. He could have, I know he had alters. I know he did, because as my siblings and I have described, there would be times where this face expression would come over his face, a dark pall would come over him, and evil Max would be there.
Mm.
And you just had to run. You'd get away from him as quickly as you freaking possibly could. And I've even got a photograph of him, with his birthday cake, with that look on his face, because both of his daughters, or two of his oldest daughters, are putting their hands on his shoulder, and it must have triggered him into that sexual, disgusting deviant. So it is not about condoning. It is not about condoning. It is about freeing yourself from the hatred and the pain and the connection. Because again, the more you feel like a victim, the more you feel like this terrible thing was done to you, the more power your abusers have over you. And you free yourself from that when you say, okay, well, I'm letting it go. Holding on to it's not going to help me. It's going to make me sick. It's not hurting them in any way, shape, or form. So it's a way of energetically letting go, so that then you can have the clarity of actually doing things in a positive way that can still end up with justice, like speaking out, helping other people, telling your story, being an example, rah, 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 without being held down by the pain. So I don't know if that's how you see it, but that's
Totally how I see it. And similar to you, Rachel, I had a moment of like awakening where, I don't know, I just got like grit in my teeth one day, and I just was like, no, no, you sicko, like it
yeah,
just, me living my life like a victim, like I've been through this, and my life is now defined by this, and you know, just has him win more. He's
yeah.
not around, but he's still abusing me.
Exactly.
No, no more. And so if I have to forgive him in order to get my power and take it back from him, I'll do that. Because that it's just so much more powerful, you know?
And you do it in style. But it's really interesting what you said about, people will jump on you for that. So I've noticed that the survivors who have not healed get really angry. Oh my God, they've jumped on me, jumped down my throat.
Mm.
And I don't blame them for that, because they're just not at that point yet.
Yeah.
Totally understand it. And sometimes I think maybe also they don't want to lose the identity of being the victim, which is understandable. I can totally understand that. I didn't want to be there anymore. I just didn't want to be there. And I can imagine you're probably in the same boat.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, there is some comfort that comes with being in that state, you know, there really is, because that's all you know. And so venturing outside of that is scary.
Yeah, it
It is
is.
scary to take responsibility and to own your life, to own what happens to you. But oh, the bliss and the freedom that comes afterwards is, oh, can't even explain. It's
Yeah,
worth everything.
it is.
And
It is 100%.
it's the ultimate FU.
It is. It is. But
It's
it also recognizes that you're not just the person, the human in this lifetime. You're an eternal soul.
Mm.
And there's something very profound in coming into a lifetime with those sorts of experiences, because there's obviously something very important that's going to come from it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, this has been so extraordinary, Rachel. I really could talk to you for days and days and days and days and days. I'd never get enough. I would just never get enough, you know? Um, for those people that don't know, Rachel is a professional psychic. And by that, that is what you do to put food on the table. And you are exceptional at it. like transformative, life altering, please, if you are seeking any kind of clarity or reassurance, or you just want to give it a go, like you have to reach out to Rachel. So please, Rachel, where can people find you and connect with you?
Thank you, darling. Well, just on that note, when I have a reading with somebody and Georgina does a reading for somebody, we have very similar information come through. Georgina uses numerology, she uses the numbers. I use psychic information coming through from my spirit guides, and somehow it matches up almost identically, which is fascinating and amazing. So if you want to find me, I am at www.number6science, bit of a mouthful.com. That's my website. I am on under my name, Rachel Vaughan, on BitChute, Rumble, Telegram, and YouTube. But don't sub to my YouTube. Please go to Rumble and BitChute, because I'm pretty sure my YouTube channel is about to become defunct. And I'm also part of a wonderful project at the moment to heal the ley lines with a dear friend, Ben Hawkes. So that is www.leylovedown, as in Ley, leyline, leylovedown.com. So that's where you can find me.
That's so amazing. And you also run a course, which I have just finished, and it blew my mind. So if you are someone who you think you may have some kind of psychic ability, and it doesn't matter whether you're someone who's just really intuitive, or you think about someone and all of a sudden they call you, like all of these little things occur for you throughout the day. If that is you, you need to go to that website, www.sixthscience.com, and sign up for Rachel's course, because your mind will be blown, quite literally, because your mind will be blown and you will be blown into all of your psychic ability. You teach all about how to read auras, right? And how to
protection, ley lines, how to find them, and how to make a difference with them. I also sort of a little bit of information about how to use telekinetic ability, how to remote view, just a series of things like that.
And also
how to find your soul purpose. That's another big one.
Huge one. Your soul
the
purpose.
most important.
Yes. So please, please, please. And I would love to get you back and we can talk all about that. There's so much I really wanted to talk to you about your ferrets, because I just love that you have ferrets, or you're getting ferrets, you rescue ferrets. Oh, so we have to do a whole podcast just on that, please, and thank you.
Oh my God, I'd love to have a podcast on ferrets. That'd be fantastic. There's none of this dark stuff.
I feel like you know a lot about ferrets.
Yeah, I know a lot about ferrets.
Oh, okay. When you get your ferrets, they have to come on the podcast. Please.
They'll be here for like 2 seconds and they'll be off the table, and then I'll be able to pick them up and bring them back, and they'll be off the table again. They do not sit, but we might be lucky.
I'll take whatever I can get.
They don't stop moving, but when they do stop, then they're sleeping. It's like you've just got this thing that just doesn't move for like 20 hours. But we'll see how we go. I mean, that would be fabulous. That'd be fantastic. You're like the mascot.
Love that. Okay. That'd be so amazing. So yes, please, 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 please. And I'll put all of your links underneath the show notes. That's what podcast people say. I'll put the links under the show notes. Of all the places to find Rachel, connect with her, do her course, get a reading with her. And I'll, of course, put all of my information underneath as well. I do have a numerology course coming up in May. Your next course is in May also. I hope we're not doing it the same day. No,
I'm a Friday.
I'm a Tuesday. Good. Good. And yeah, thank you so, so much.
Thank you, darling. Thank you.
Thank you to all the listeners listening right now. I hope to see, no, not I hope. I'll see you next time.
Nice. Love it. You're good at this.